This is an acknowledgement and understanding that your thoughts and words will be shared more broadly. We also, if you have an opportunity to go up and change your name, if your pronouns and the organization you're associated with aren't up in your name in your window, you go up to the three dots in the right hand corner and go ahead and change those, mostly so that we know, one, how to address you, but also a lot of really great kind of opportunities to connect with people happen here that you might want to follow up later, and knowing people's organizations or kind of how they're affiliated with the movement can be helpful for tracking folks down afterwards. Okay, we also have closed captions enabled, so if you need those, you can activate those on your screen, and we just want to make sure that if there's any other accessibility needs, let us know either in the chat or just raise your hand and we'll do whatever we can to accommodate. Okay. That was a whirlwind of information. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. So we're going to spend a good portion of our time talking about the broader movement, what's happening with Movement Building Coalition, which has been actually doing a lot of work over the last 6 months to kind of come together and start having conversations. We thought that it would be really powerful to actually start this conversation with a little bit of inspiration. So we invited Multnomah County Commissioner and GBI supporter Commissioner Susheela Jayapal here to actually start the conversation. Commissioner Jayapal is one of the founding members of Counties for Guaranteed Income, so she's been thinking about the role of counties in this space long before the coalition even began. We're very excited to have her here. I'm going to do a little bit more of an introduction about her, and then we're going to ask her a few questions so that we can learn a little bit more about why counties and for guaranteed income came to be, and ways that we might be able to support the work that they have on their roadmap. So Susheela Jayapal has proudly served as District 2 Multnomah County Commissioner since January 2019. She was born in India and came to the US when she was 16 to go to college. She's a lawyer whose last legal job was as general counsel for Adidas America, which is based here in Portland, which is also Multnomah County, is the county that the city of Portland and many surrounding cities are located in. She's also spent 2 decades as a volunteer community leader, advocate for a number of community-based organizations, which every time we have the opportunity to chat with her, it's so clear in how she thinks about things that she's been doing a lot of work as a community organizer. Her priorities as a commissioner are focused on housing and homelessness, economic justice, clean air, and climate resilience and public safety. So there's probably no surprise to all of us why guaranteed income has become part of the work that she does. Thank you so much, Commissioner Jayapal, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Stacy, and good afternoon, everyone. Wow, so I will say that I was expecting a small informal group of folks, and it's pretty amazing to be in this large, hopefully still informal group of folks, because I have informal remarks. I don't have a speech for you. But it's just, I got to tell you, it just warms my heart to be in a room full of people to whom I don't have to explain guaranteed income, what it is, or why we need it. I just want to appreciate all of the work that Stacy and Junae and their team do at Income Movement to bring everybody together and be the connective tissue, and appreciate everything that every single one of you is doing every day to make this happen. So thank you. I'm very, very appreciative and honored to be here. So the questions that Stacy and the folks at Income Movement asked me to talk about were really, why counties? Why counties for a guaranteed income? And to start in on that, I'll talk a little bit about why I ended up at the county. As Stacy mentioned, I'm a lawyer. She very kindly called me an organizer. I'll tell you that I don't have the organizing experience that you have. I'm a lawyer. And then I worked with nonprofit organizations, and that's service, but it's not necessarily organizing. But I looked around my community here in Multnomah County, 800,000 people, houses the largest city in Oregon, Portland, Oregon. And what I saw was that it was becoming a place where I was not going to want to stay, because the people that I most cared about and most identified with were not thriving. I represent a part of Portland that has experienced significant displacement and gentrification, communities of color, immigrants and refugees being pushed out of the central city, out into the suburbs. And as I watched that happen, I just started thinking to myself, what more can I do? And it was sort of a peeling of the onion process that led me to the county. And I picked the county because the county, in my mind, was the jurisdiction that was serving those people that I was so concerned about. So I started in January of 2019. Of course, in 2020, we went into a pandemic. And so my experience in this office has been profoundly shaped by what we experienced during the pandemic. In fact, the first year of any job is just sort of getting to know where things are. So if you look at the bulk of my service, it has been during this pandemic. And all of the things that I was concerned about were thrown into such sharper relief. So a couple of years ago, I'd always known about guaranteed income as a concept, but I really started thinking about it after I came into this office. And a couple of years ago, I reached out, Googling around, found mayors for guaranteed income, reached out to that group, started chatting with them. And I was like, well, why is it mayors? Where are counties? Why isn't it counties? And the answer is because the amazing visionary Mayor Michael Stubbs from Stockton founded Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. But from that conversation, separately, I think they had already been on the track of thinking about counties. And as Stacy mentioned, a couple of months ago, we launched Counties for a Guaranteed Income, and I was one of the founding members. So that's the context of my experience. And why counties, why counties for guaranteed income? Why is it so critical to have counties on board? I think you all probably know this, but a little bit about what counties do. Each one is different. It depends on its relationships with the surrounding jurisdictions, the cities, the state, whether it's a home rule county or not. But in general, counties are the safety net provider. So for us, what does that mean here at Multnomah County? And again, every one of your counties is probably a little bit different. Multnomah County houses aging and I'm going to look at my list so I don't miss things. We house aging and disability services, mental health services for the uninsured, federally qualified health clinics. That's a little bit unusual. We serve people experiencing homelessness. We provide shelter. We provide wraparound services. We administer benefits that are paid for by the federal and state governments, things like utility assistance, rent assistance. We provide services for survivors of domestic violence. We house our Department of Community Justice as parole and probation, and our budget includes the jails. We do not, the sheriff is separately elected, the sheriff runs the jails, but our budget pays for the jails, as well as significant portions of the district attorney's budget. So we are the social safety net provider. We are providing, and this is what just came so clear to me, we're providing this range, these slices of services, right, that try to ameliorate the conditions of poverty and economic instability. And every one of the people who's accessing those services has to figure out which slice they need, has to go through a separate process to get that slice, to apply for that slice, to make sure they qualify for that slice. And you really, sitting at a county, you really see so clearly the dysfunction in that system. Every time we identify a new need, we create a new funding stream and a new process to go along with that funding stream. And people are forced to piece that together. This is not a critique of Multnomah County. This is not a critique of any county. This is the system in which we operate. And in fact, I'm quite proud of some of the things we did during the pandemic, Multnomah County, to the extent that we had flexible general fund money. We really tried to put it out in a flexible way. And so when we were serving people who needed to be quarantined, we provided flex funds. Here's a pot of money. Use it for whatever is going to help you and your family stay safe and healthy during this quarantine period. But a lot of our funding is not able to be used in that way. And so we really see this sort of siloization of the services. It's incredibly ineffective and inefficient. We spend so much human and financial resource trying to make sure that people get only what our systems believe they deserve, instead of spending the time to actually give them what they need. And what they need is unrestricted cash. what I've seen so clearly is through these services that we provide, addressing the symptoms of poverty, some people can get to survival. Some people can get a little beyond survival to some level of stability. A few people can get on a different trajectory, but for the most part, we are addressing those symptoms. We're called a safety net. That metaphor is so applicable because we are serving people who walk a high wire every day. And that's why they need a safety net. Because even after we provide those services, they're still on that high wire, right? And so our job, all of us as human beings, as counties, as advocates, as organizers, is to not have people needing that safety net, to get people off the high wire. And that's why I started thinking about guaranteed income. It was the combination of seeing the problems and seeing during the pandemic the way that we did actually become more flexible and put more money out flexibly. At the federal level, we saw the child tax credit. We all know what that meant. So it's that combination of sitting at this nexus of services to the folks who need them and new ways of doing things. So that's what led me to it. And that's really why counties are so important to this conversation, because we are serving the people who are experiencing the consequences of hundreds of years of policy decisions about who deserves to thrive. We counties serve those folks. We are dealing with the legacy of that system. So that's why I believe counties are essential, and every jurisdiction is obviously essential to the conversation. But it is that really deep connection to the people that we're trying to serve, I think, that makes us essential. So I want to talk a little bit about the work that Multnomah County is doing. We are in early stages of these things, but what we are trying to do is infuse cash assistance throughout our services. So finding all of these touch points that we have, that we are sitting at the intersection of, and trying to figure out which places are the best places where we start to infuse cash. We don't always call it guaranteed income. We find that the system is more receptive if we talk about it as cash assistance, as something supplemental that we're doing. But in my mind, every one of those things is a seed of a pilot program. We do have one official pilot program. It's called the Multnomah Mothers Trust. We started it with ARP funding, with federal funding, and it provides $500 a month to a group of 100 Black moms. And we work with a couple of our community-based organization partners to disperse that funding. We also invite those moms to tell us about their experience, tell us what else they would like, and we pay them for that. So we pay them for that participation in the follow-up on top of the $500 that we're providing. We've only been doing it for under a year. I think anecdotally, we hear everything that you would expect to hear, which is that there's a concrete financial benefit. People talk about buying sort of a washer dryer. They talk about buying diapers. They talk about really, really specific things. And they also talk about the emotional and psychological benefit of knowing that money is coming in every single month. So that's our pilot project. The other thing that we are working on is last year I got funding for what we're kind of grandiosely calling an economic justice project. It's for the moment, it's a person. It is a staff person who is researching different strategies around economic justice. Again, recognizing that a lot of what we do isn't about justice, actually. It's about survival, then maybe it's about stability, then maybe it's about a little bit of mobility. What kinds of strategies really take us to justice? And we've created a blueprint, and guaranteed income is one of those strategies. It's not by any means the only one, but it's one of the strategies. And so my hope for the next couple of years is that we really develop that blueprint and figure out how to adopt some of those strategies. We have constraints like everybody does. We have budget challenges, but I think simply articulating economic justice as an objective for a jurisdiction is actually pretty significant. And the minute we put that out there, I talk about it as taking an idea for a walk. The minute you take that idea for a walk and you articulate it as an objective, I think you're that much closer to actually working on it. So those are some of the things that Multnomah County is doing. We're obviously going to have to figure out how to fund Multnomah Mothers Trust once our ARP funding expires this year. It's my hope that we will continue to fund it from the general fund, but it is a pilot program. And one of the things I've appreciated about what I've read about the income movement and about the work that's being done is recognizing that ultimately we need a federal strategy, right? This is what we're pointing towards. And this blooming movement of piloting, which is really important, isn't so much about figuring out whether this works. We know it does, but we know that we've also got to figure out the best way to run a guaranteed income program. But to me, the magic and the importance of all of these pilots is that I think what it's sort of like an impressionist picture, right? You've got all of these dots around our maps, and we're going to bring them together, and together all of those arrows point in the direction of a federal strategy. And that's what we've got to be heading towards. And that, I know, is what Counties for Guaranteed Income is heading towards. So I think the last question I was asked to answer was, what do counties need? What do electeds need in order to be supported in this work and to move forward in the work? And my first answer is it's a two-way street. I always want to know what organizers like you need from me. But I will also say that your governments need affirmation that this is the right thing to do, because we get a lot of whatever the opposite of affirmation is. I'm not sure what that word is. But your governments and your electeds, if they embark and when they embark on these programs, need your support. They need you. And I'm going to say to my Multnomah County folks, anybody who's out there, come on in. We're in the middle of our budget process. We just had our first public hearing yesterday. We have one next week, and then 2 weeks later, they're on our website. Come and tell us what you appreciate about Multnomah Mothers Trust, or come and tell us why we should do more guaranteed income pilots and projects, and what kinds of guaranteed income pilots and projects you'd like to see. It really does make a difference. You're not going to see it in the next budget, but the more you're in our boardrooms and our budget meetings telling us that that's what you want, I think the more of that you will see. So that affirmation and support and confirmation, and then just the continued relationship of which I've so appreciated with Stacy and the team at Income Movement. It is important for us not to get buried in our silos and understanding what's happening in the rest of the community. Stacy's already connected us to actually programs that are happening at the state that I didn't know about. So making those connections and continuing to bring all of what I'd like to think of as points of light, as cheesy as that might sound, I think it's very appropriate, bringing all of those points of light together to connect and really move us forward on this path. So that is what I have to offer for you today. Stacy, I don't know whether you had any questions that I didn't answer. I'm happy to do that as well.
No, I think this is great. It's been really wonderful to hear. I mean, we've had a chance to, because I live in Portland and based in Multnomah County. I've had a chance to hear more, not only from you, but as well other folks from different parts of the administrative side of things, of how you guys have been thinking about cash during the pandemic, and how that started to inform broader program design is really great to be able to share with more folks. And folks have been making comments as you've been speaking. I think really, I do love also this idea of us collectively thinking about how do we make sure we know when budgets are getting discussed, and when are those opportunities for us to actually advocate strongly for our budgets, our tax dollars, to be utilized in ways that feel most impactful and important for our community members, and to back you guys up as you're doing this work. I think that those are really great reminders and opportunities for us to think about, in particular as we're thinking about how do we coordinate and support as counties grow, counties for guaranteed income grow, like how do we support that through more formal direct action with all of our grassroots activists and organizers. So really appreciate it. And I think it's a really great segue into some of the next conversations, which are focused on just that. How do we start to prioritize the work that we're going to do in building the movement towards that federal policy? So really appreciate you taking some time, Commissioner Jayapal. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much. Really kind of lifted my afternoon to be here, and look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Woohoo! I love her. She's the sister of Representative Jayapal up in from Washington. So if you, that's a powerhouse family. Like, and just awesome, just incredibly accessible and lovely. So really happy that she was able to chat a little bit more. And you know, upcoming in June, we have the big conference, and President Preckwinkle, who's a founding member from Cook County, who actually helped found Counties for a Guaranteed Income, will be speaking then as well, doing some of the opening remarks there. So we'll have a chance to hear a little bit more from the perspective of Chicago, you know, where those commonalities, where the overlaps are of what Commissioner Jayapal is focused on and what President Preckwinkle is focused on, but also understand more how we can support the work they're doing. So I would love to, as we move along and continue this conversation, we're going to move very much so into where are we as a movement? What's the progress that we've been making together, and move into learning more from you guys, hearing more from you guys, what you think the priorities should be. So I want to hand it over to June in order for her to she's leading the Movement Building Coalition. I see a lot of folks here who are part of that, and also a lot of folks who are not part of that, which is exactly what these quarterly State of the Movement meetings are about, is bringing everybody who's kind of participating in this movement in a lot of different capacities together to talk a little bit more and learn a little bit more from each other. So I'm going to hand it over to June, and we'll continue this conversation. If you have questions, if you need us to slow down, or if you want to dig a little bit deeper into topics, put things in the chat, and we'll be really thoughtful about how we kind of make sure that we give time over the course of this. This is an hour-and-a-half meeting, just for folks to know. It's 90 minutes, but we're going to try to get as much into the first hour as possible, because we know some folks have hard stops at the top of the hour.
Yeah. So, hey, everybody, I'm back feeling super inspired and excited after Commissioner Jayapal's presentation. Again, I live in Multnomah County and I adore her. She's super down to earth and funny and generous. So it's really cool to have her. This is our agenda for the rest of today. Like Stacey said, this is an hour-and-a-half meeting. We just heard from Commissioner Jayapal. I'm going to walk us through a quick snapshot of the current happenings and the sort of state of the movement, some guiding principles. And then this is where we really want to get. So pardon me as I go through 2 and 3 kind of quickly. If we have time at the end, let's come back to this and when we answer questions. But we really want to get your feedback on some of the priorities for the movement, which is what we're going to be doing here. So first, let's take a look at where we are. This is just kind of a big picture, bird's eye view of where we are in this current moment in history, which is a super exciting time for basic income. So we're at the spring quarterly State of the Movement. But before we got here, there was lots of work that was done starting actually last fall through up until today. At the end of the month, we have our second Movement Building Coalition meeting, and we're going to use some of this information that we collect from y'all today to help set up that meeting at the end of the month. And the Movement Building Coalition, which you'll hear about a little bit more in just a moment, will be using some of that feedback. Many of you are going to be at the big conference in June, either in person or online. So that's coming up. We're going to be doing a lot of movement building work, a lot of hands-on work session kind of stuff. And then we have a unique opportunity the day after the conference to meet in person for pretty much a full day workshop. And there's an online option also where we take some of the learnings from big and we start leveraging that into sort of back into the Movement Building Coalition, where we think about our priorities and our vision and our strategy. And then June 29th, we have our third Movement Building Coalition meeting, where we start really coalescing the priorities and thinking about what do we actually want to work on in terms of a campaign. So here's where I'm going to kind of go a little bit faster. Our guiding principles. Many of you already understand what human-centered design is. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. We can come back, but the point we want you to take away from this is that we believe our movement must be inclusive, human-centered, and co-designed. So this is centering lived experience experts. This is centering as many people as possible in our experiences in the design of how we move toward our end goal of passing federal basic income legislation. We're going to take a little bit longer on this slide because this is actually pretty important. And I want to do a shout out to Silverly Signon for giving us this graphic. This comes from the International Association for Public Participation, and Silverly gave this to us to help us kind of think about different levels of engagement and participation. And so let's take a look at this continuum for a moment. So this moves from the left to the right in terms of like the depth and amount and complexity of participation. So it goes from simply being informed, where like, we'll just keep you informed. We'll let you know what's going on. This might take the shape of you receive a newsletter from us about what's happening. So you're just keeping up to date. To consult, we'll keep you informed, and we'll listen to and acknowledge some of your concerns and aspirations, and provide feedback on how your input influenced some decisions. To involve, so which is another level deeper, all the way to collaborate and empower. So you keep hearing us. Some of you are maybe even new to being with income movement. So we've started a movement building coalition, and this is a group of people who've pretty much raised their hands. They've been participating with us for a long time, and they've raised their hands to be part of a broad coalition of people who are going to meet regularly, contribute resources, time, and energy to doing movement level work, building an infrastructure, building tools, building a platform, designing campaigns for us so we can work together as a collective. So the movement building coalition is at the collaborate and empower level. So Income Movement believes that it is critical for movement level work that we provide opportunities for folks to get involved along this whole range of participation levels, that and that people can pop in and out depending on interest and capacity and time. So over here, we've blocked off the inform, consult, and involve categories. This is stuff like what we're doing right now, the quarterly state of the movement. That's like informing, consulting. We're actually getting some feedback from you in just a minute. This is maybe attending some workshops, educational events, maybe the big conference. And then the collaborate and empower, again, this is the movement building coalition. These are the people that are actually going to be responsible for carrying forward the work. And at the end of today, we'll put a link in the chat so you can sign up to join the movement building coalition, or determine like what level of participation you want to participate in. All right. So let's jump into our movement priorities. So just a reminder, we're not just landing here all of a sudden. There's been a lot of work happening to get us to this point. And some of that work was our fall 22 survey of organizations. So in just this past fall, we sent out a broad survey to organizations in the basic income ecosystem, and we've got 72 organizations who participated, and they gave us a lot of data around what they're working on, what they're interested in, how they feel their role lands in the movement. And then in winter 2023, we did a series of roundtable interviews. 64 people participated in those. This was a very, very diverse group of people, including 11 pilot pilot recipients, 16 activists, and 37 organizations. That's like think tank folks, researchers, pilot administrators, etc. So the data that you're going to see in a minute comes specifically from that data collection process. We wanted to show you this slide because we wanted to illustrate how excited people are to join this effort. So this comes directly from the roundtables where we interviewed people from around the country. Every single person who participated in the roundtable interviews wanted to participate in the Movement Building Coalition in some way or another. As you'll see, there were 0 folks who were like, I'm not interested or available. And we dropped this graphic here so you can see that people are interested and available at different levels of participation. So Movement Building Coalition, this is the like collaborate and empower side. And then these are folks who just wanted to stay informed, to be consulted once in a while, to be involved with like getting their input in here and there. If you were with us for our last quarterly State of the Movement, this slide should look familiar. Oftentimes, and if you're with us anytime in this last year or so, you've probably heard us talk about the pillars of a movement. And so this is just a reminder of what that means when we're talking about pillars. And I know we've got everything set up here in terms of like blocks and columns. I just want to say explicitly, we don't mean for these to be siloed. We know that all of these ideas are overlapping, dynamic, and there's a wonderful interplay, and some of them, they just can't exist without the other. So these pillars are people. So this is the grassroots base. This is what we need for federal policy. We need a grassroots base that is thriving and engaged, broad, intersectional. We need coalitions who are going to advocate for basic income policies. This is like the base that's going to start pushing society for basic income. We need ideas. So this is culture shifting. This is narrative change. This is fighting that, pardon my French, bullshit of, oh, if you give people direct cash, they're going to just spend it on alcohol or vices, etc. We need policies. We need a broad range of direct cash policies passed across all levels of government that pave the way for national legislation. And then we need political champs. We need a caucus of elected officials. We need people who are going to be pushing to pass legislation. So we all know this. This was really just kind of a quick reminder so we can dig in here. So we're going to land here for just a minute and spend a little more time here. I know I'm going fast because some of you, I know you have to jump at the end of the hour. So let's take a moment and slow down now. So what you're seeing here is the results of our engagement at the last quarterly State of the Movement in January, where we asked folks to answer a question about the future of the movement, as well as the roundtable participants. So we asked pretty much the same question at the quarterly State of the Movement as we did in our roundtable interviews. We asked folks to imagine future movement accomplishments that would feel exciting and that would also illustrate progress toward federal basic income. So it's like, what would just light you up in maybe 5 or 10 years if you heard that we like actually like accomplished this? And we did a broad brainstorm, and then Income Movement coded it and put it in these categories. And this is what came up as what was most exciting for folks. And again, this comes from the community. This doesn't come from us. So in the pillar of grassroots base building and coalitions, folks are really excited about the idea of building an engaged, inclusive, bipartisan base through coordinated regular meeting spaces for learning, sharing, and action, with an accessible infrastructure with clear communications and points of contact, maybe like chapters. So this is really about like holding space, regular, consistent space for us to come together. Folks are also really interested in creating a unified vision communicated in some kind of playbook or toolkit or platform for coordinated grassroots efforts across the country. In the pillar of culture shifting and narrative change, people were really excited about the idea of creating wide-reaching viral popular media with influencers, celebrities, people with notoriety. That was the top interest. People were also really interested in developing a strategy and clarity around messaging and language as targeted for specific audiences for socializing and normalizing guaranteed basic income. I thought of this when Commissioner Jayapal was saying, like, in government, she's got to be careful about some of the language that she uses. Like, do we call it cash assistance? And she thinks of it as GBI. So like, what is this? And people were really concerned about that in our roundtable discussions. Like, how do we talk about this? What is the language we use? Next, targeting and combating specific myths with counter narratives. So this is again, like if you give people direct cash, it's just going to make them lazy, or people don't know how to handle that, and we're going to like lose control of our population, et cetera. And then people were interested in using accessible, inclusive, non-oppressive, high-quality research and data to drive narrative change. So lots of folks were interested in using data to push narrative change, but also people were really, really interested in making sure that the methodologies used for that data and the way we include people was not reiterative of oppressive structures already in place. Building policy. The top thing for folks was protecting and bundling benefits, improving qualification and the application process. People were also really, really interested in expanding and making the CTC permanent, protecting families and youth. Lots of conversation around figuring out how we're going to fund this through tax reform, dividends, sovereign wealth funds, et cetera. Lots of excitement around California because there's a lot happening in California. So using California or some specific state as a case study, and then advocating for reparations and justice for Black and Native communities and targeting vulnerable populations. Political champs. People were really interested in focusing on building advocates at the local level, so mayors and governors. People were interested in cultivating and expanding leadership outside of the current big names and bringing more voices in, pushing political candidates to take a stand on GBI and their official campaigns and party platforms, and working toward building bipartisan agreement on GBI and developing more Republican support. So we wanted to share that with you so you could get a sense of where the community was already thinking, but we wanted to check it with you. And we know that there are a lot of people here in this meeting who perhaps didn't participate in the roundtables or weren't at the last quarterly State of the Movement. So we want to do some polls. Go ahead, Stacey.
We also know, like, looking at this, I don't know how you guys feel, but this is a lot, right? So our ability, when we think about how we can be successful in building the movement, we know that we're going to have to be very strategic and thoughtful about what we focus on first, why we're focusing on those things first, because, you know, so many of these pieces are long, very long, kind of, you know, years and years, and very expansive in scope. And so right now we want to start having conversations with you guys and start framing this to understand, one, are these the right things? And two, even of these things, which ones feel like the most important to you guys as starting points, as things that either because you're like, man, that's going to take a long time to do, we better get started on it sooner rather than later, or hey, I'm already doing work in this space, so it might be easy for us to do, you know, to be able to start to think about this more on that movement level. So we're going to go into and actually do some polls here and have some conversations around each of these different areas so that we can really make sure we're understanding what your guys' thoughts are around what we should be prioritizing at the movement level.
Thank you, Stacey. Okay, so let's do that. Let's start with grassroots base and coalition building. So we're going to pop up a Zoom poll in just a second. We want your opinion. And the question that you'll see is, regarding grassroots and coalitions, which of the following is your top priority? And you can only choose one. And these are your selections. Connecting different sectors of the movement together. And these questions come from the similar questions to what we asked folks in the roundtable and what we asked folks in the previous survey. 2, integrate the voices of lived experience experts across all work. 3, build an engaged, inclusive, bipartisan base through coordinated regular meeting spaces for learning, sharing, and action with an accessible infrastructure and clear lines of communication and points of contact.
We might not need to read all these out loud. I think people might be able to read them themselves.
Okay.
It's like a lot. But I just want to check in with folks because we opened this up actually at the beginning, and it looks like 40, like everybody has filled this out. Is that right? Can I see, have people filled out this form? I see some yeses and some nos. Are you guys seeing the poll on your screen? I see you, Giselle. I know. Yes. Okay, so some of you are seeing this on your screen and some of you are not. I think if you click, anybody want to come off?
So I see the questions on the screen, but I don't see a link to answering them.
Okay. So I think we might have to, let me see if I end the poll. I'm going to relaunch it and see if that. Okay. Can you guys see it now? Okay, great. If you guys can go ahead and choose the one thing, you only get one. This really is about prioritizing. Okay. Nice. Still about 8 or 10 of you that need to choose. Okay, 5 more seconds. Make your choice if you haven't. Then we're going to end the poll and take a look at things. Okay. Ending the poll and sharing the results. Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay. Building an engaged, inclusive, bipartisan base through regular meetings and infrastructure. 40% of you. Connecting different sectors of the movement. Let's pause here for a few minutes and just talk about this. We'd love to hear maybe a couple of people share, come off mute and share, or put in the chat like why you chose your top choice, so that we can make sure that we're interpreting this data correctly. Yeah, Giselle.
So I chose the first option because it's the most possible realistic one at this time. I totally agree with the second, the first winner, the coordination, but I'm very well aware that there isn't one Republican mayor or, red state county that has done this. Mm-hmm. So it's an aspiration, but in my view, if we're going to do this, we have to start where we can. And in this respect, I just want to bring this up because I think it's important in the context of that question. So the Gerald R. Fund for Humanity has for the last 3 years funded the daily basic income today news site that puts together, that curates all of the articles that appear, at least 2 articles a day all over the world, but mostly in the United States. This is a free informational. So if information is the first pillar informing people, This is a perfect instrument, costs no one anything. All it needs is to be put out there. So we have X number of people in this movement, and as far as I know, no one promotes this. And it covers every aspect of guaranteed income, universal basic income, all of the different parts of this cause are covered by the articles that they publish on a daily basis. I don't understand how we can keep talking about various actions, but we do not do anything about them.
Well, I think what you're getting at, Giselle, is how do we make sure that people are aware of what does exist and opportunities to actually, maximize or bring together all of the different efforts that are happening, so that we're not working one in silos, but also, I think this gets at the connecting different sectors of the movement, but also on the building the kind of engaged, coordinated movement with regular meetings and the accessible infrastructure.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, I think
That's what's happening now. I'm saying that after all of this happens, there is no follow-up. There's no follow-through. I mean, and we keep talking about the same things over and over again, but then, it doesn't lead to any specific thing. Like, for instance, we have 250,000 people who apply for the Chicago basic income. And that is a group of people for whom the people in charge have the emails. They are perfect candidates for being recruited to this cause. And yet I'm not aware of any efforts or even people who participated in Stockton. What's happened to them? Where are they?
Well, I would love to hear from some other folks as well, to understand a little bit more about how people voted, why they voted. But to me, what I'm trying to get at, Giselle, is that what I'm hearing you say is that and what I have experienced is that there actually isn't any single place where people who are like, how can I understand what is happening within the news? There's no place, without having been in this meeting and hearing you say it, knows that there's basic income today. So how do we build an infrastructure where literally anybody at any time is trying to understand, how can I read the latest article about what's going on in the US around basic income? And they search that in a database or do something, and it's like, basic income today, sweet, it already exists. And I'm going to go to it, and that's going to be one of my core tools. So I think, to me, what you're getting at is a lack of coordination and a lack of a central location for people to access the work that already exists out there and maximizing, like utilizing it and maximizing it. So I'd love to hear some other folks, because I know the building that engaged and coordinated movement, as well as the connecting across different sectors, was top of mind for everyone. I'd love to understand, like, why is that, in your minds, kind of the most critical thing for the movement building coalition to start with, like to start building and designing? Any other folks that want to share a little bit more about why they chose what they chose? Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, but before I talk about that, I want to say that I really do agree with Giselle's point about, we need to make sure that we have all of these different people that have signed up for or applied to various different pilots. And that is a massive, massive base of people that we can get engaged with the movement. And we can filter it all through something like Basic Income Today, which is designed for that. And that can be integrated a lot better with income movement and all that stuff. So that's one thing. And then, so the reason why I chose the bipartisan and integrating a base of support is that I think if we are going to ensure that guaranteed income gets passed. One way to do that is by making it not political, not politicized, as in partisan. I think Giselle had a really legitimate point that, like, up till now, there really has not been any Republican mayors or state people or anyone that has done a guaranteed income pilot on the conservative side. And but I would say that it is really, really important for us to change that. Uh, very, very important to find some like philanthropists that can fund guaranteed income from a conservative viewpoint, as it there are definitely, like, people like Milton Friedman and people on the libertarian arguments that are very good for basic income and the basic income guarantee. So I feel like that's very important to the future of our movement and getting policy change actually done. If we can get a bunch of conservatives to actually fund it, like philanthropists, Republicans, and getting on the private side, and then also getting some public Republicans, even if it's just a handful, and then getting that news everywhere. That would be really impactful, I think.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Hannah,
we
one
saw at the
last-
roundtables,
Oh, yeah.
people were concerned about that also. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stacy, you're calling it Hannah.
Hannah, yeah, just real quick, and then we'll do our next poll so we can kind of move through and make sure that we're gathering as much from you all as possible.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that we do need bipartisan support, but I feel I disagree that we as a whole, as a movement, should be moving toward a bipartisan way. I actually think that we should focus in on our strengths. So like my experience with the Yang campaign, trying to like do like a central type of messaging just creates a lot of drama like internally. So I feel like the people who are pushing for basic income on like the progressive lefty like side, do that, go all in on that. And then people who are conservative, they should work on conservative. So I feel like having a segregation of duties, like coming at it from all sides, I feel is a little more beneficial. So I don't want to waste my time talking to like Republicans unless, I'm actually educating like a legislator. But in terms of like community organizing, I want to stick with people who are already on board, already excited, and we can move forward together with like strength and critical mass.
Awesome. Okay. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and do our next poll. This is getting into the narrative change side of things. Like what from your guys' perspective is the most important to start with. So let me go ahead and get that one. This is culture shifting, narrative change. Stop sharing. Okay, here we go. So what's your top priority in this culture shifting and narrative change side? We'll let you guys just in quiet read them and choose. Now they're rolling in earnest, now that everybody's had a chance to read them. We're at about half of you have submitted. Okay. 5 more seconds. If you haven't made your choice, do it now. Nice. A couple people snuck in there right at the end. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and share our results. Strategy and clarity around messaging and language is rising to the top. I would love to maybe hear from a few folks who haven't spoken yet. You don't have to necessarily have chosen the top one, but we'd love to understand if there's anything that you want to share that would help us understand why you chose what you chose. Yeah, Chris.
Hey, yeah, so I did choose developing a strategy and clarity around messaging. I do think, however, that absolutely will end up going hand in hand with targeting and combating specific myths, right? Like, I think one of the things that is really key to opening hearts and minds around this movement is ensuring that we craft that messaging appropriately to get through whatever sort of preconceived notions they have.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Latha?
Yes, hi. I'm sorry that I'm not on video. I'm actually driving hands-free, so I apologize for that. But yeah, one of the issues, so I've been involved in this movement, different depths, since the Yang campaign. And one of the problems I see is that like these different movements, they're not so there's universal basic income, which means, that everybody gets this regardless of income, regardless of class. And then there's guaranteed basic income, and those are not they should not be the same things. Universal is not a synonym for guaranteed. And because of the fact that these pilot programs tend to be for a specific demographic, whether it's income-based, class-based, geographic-based, race and income-based. Ms. Jayapal was talking about pilot program with, for Black women. It's very hard for somebody like me who actually wants universal basic income. I don't want all these offshoot pilots. And I understand baby steps, but we've been taking baby steps now for like 3 years. And we really need to strategize on how to have actual universal basic income. And maybe the problem is people within the movement don't agree with that. Maybe there's a faction, or maybe the majority of people think that it's fine to have guaranteed basic income based on certain criteria, which I'm not against that. It's just, that's not what I want. I want universal basic income for all US citizens and permanent residents. And that should be that. And people can use it for different things. And people ask me, well, why would we want to give that to people that make $1 million a year? Well, so, and the thing is, why does it matter? So somebody who uses it for groceries and paying for their kids' extracurriculars. Other people will use it to invest. People will use it to donate to causes that they want, whatever it is. And so that's part of, I have a strategy issue with all these different offshoot movements, because now I'm very confused as to what exactly are we trying to do. When I signed on to advocate for UBI, I actually signed on to advocate for UBI, not for splintered pilot programs and splintered movements. And if we don't get one message together or one strategy together, I don't see this advancing because it is too confusing. Thank you.
Thanks, Latha. Faye, and then Steve. If we can keep them, try to be kind of a little bit succinct, because I want to make sure that we get lots of folks to be able to share as we move through. We have 2 more questions after this that we want to get to. Faye,
Okay, I have 2 different things that I wanted to address very quickly. One is I chose the coordinate national narrative change and culture shifting. I think some of these overlap, so it's hard to choose between that and the number 3.
Yeah.
The reason I didn't choose number 3 is I've given up on a lot of things that I worked on before because it didn't seem like it was working, right? Politics is not working for me. Democracy is a lie as far as I'm concerned at this point. So, so I've been finding ways to, first of all, the person that said we should move towards, depoliticizing. Well, I'm creating a community token, which will be like a time banking type of token. in which we can just issue a UBI as a community. Whoever joins the community will be part of it, and we will create a community token. And this is an option that has been created by a lot of different, there's UBI coins, there's all kinds of things going on out there, but we believe that we can do a better job, right? So we're trying to do that so anyway, the second thing that we can do is we can go around all of this UBI and all of these. I don't like to allow the current way of thinking to corrupt what we're doing by forcing me to constantly react to what they're saying, constantly reacting. I don't want to be put in that reactive position. I want to control the narrative, right? I want to create something that's better. So in order to do that, I have to stop saying, okay, well, what are they going to say? And then what am I going to say? And then what are they going to say? I mean, I'm like constantly in Twitter framework then. I don't want to do that. I want to say, here's what we need to know about money, and it's not being taught anywhere. Nobody knows how money is created and being destroyed and on a daily basis through the action of loans. Nobody knows, like, we're not being taught the right things K through 12 all the way through. And then even people who take macroeconomics don't learn it. And I'm just like, that's crazy. That how can legislators legislate properly when they don't even understand how money works? So I'm going right after money itself. And that's why I'm working on the library program. So
Nice.
hopefully I can get more people interested in teaching this curriculum and creating it together. And if you don't like my curriculum, do your own.
Nice. Thank you, Faye. Steve, what did you choose and why?
Yeah, I chose targeting specific myths, and I want to echo what Faye just said. She hit the nail right on the head. I'm working with very high-end government and finance professionals who do not understand how inflation works. They will say with a straight face that paying rich people dividends helps the economy, but paying everyone a dividend is going to destroy the economy. And it physically can't happen, it mathematically can't happen. And even people in that space have been conditioned to believe that if you give people money, they will do the worst possible thing with it, and there won't be a net loss for society, when every bit of data we have shows exactly the opposite.
Nice. Yep. Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. Okay, let's do our next. And I think we'll do these next two a little bit like back to back, and then we'll see, because they're both in the political space. And I think one policy is one, and then the electeds is the second. And I think we can I think they're very, very connected. So we can have a conversation about both of them together. Okay, so let me go back. Okay, so on the policy side of things, we'd love to understand, what do you think should be the top priorities for movement building as we do this work? Okay, another like 30 seconds if you haven't taken the poll. And Janae, can you maybe take a screenshot of this when I show it, and then drop your screenshot into a slide in that deck, and then we'll do the second one, and you can drop that in so we can see them side by side. Awesome, thank you. Okay, let's end this poll and share the results real quick. Enacting things like the Alaska Permanent Fund is there. This is actually spread pretty across several. figuring out funding sources for large scale policy, focusing on a single state as a case study, targeting vulnerable populations. Okay.
Stacey, I have a question, and maybe I should have
Yeah.
asked this before. What is the difference between focusing on a single state as an option and then enacting universal policies like the Alaska Permanent Fund? To me, they kind of seem like the same thing, but maybe I'm missing something.
I think focusing on a single state would be that at the movement level, there's going deep into one state that's really active and creating like best practices and pushing a lot of different things, kind of almost have it be an incubator for like what kinds of policy, what kinds of work can be done, and then creating like a best practice as a toolkit based on what happens there for other states to be able to model. Like, okay, we tested these things out and actually we didn't get anywhere with X, Y, and Z, but we got really far with these two pieces. So maybe other states should try to push those two pieces and see if we can get more states involved, or that can help us think about how to do federal level work.
Got it.
Whereas the pushing is enacting universal policies. Is that the one that you were saying, enacting the universal?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's literally like a universal policy. That's very different than a child tax credit expansion in a state.
Oh, I see. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, let's look at I'm going to stop sharing and then we're going to do the second one. I think. Okay, and this is political champs. What should we focus on? Oops, the first one should say mayors and counties, not mayors and governors. The second one is state level, so state level legislators and governors. And cultivating our own political champs from our own basic income community. This is actually having folks within our community run for office, right? Become an actual elected official and be nurturing and supporting folks who want to run for office that are already deep advocates. Okay, another moment as the last few of you. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll. I'm gonna share the results. Janae is gonna take a screenshot of it and then she'll drop it into a slide so we can look at these two side by side. This one feels a little bit more consistent, or there's two that are rising to the top, pushing political candidates to take a stand on GBI in their official campaigns, party platforms, the work that they're doing, or the work that they were going to promise they do during elections, and then focusing on building state level support, legislators, governors. Feels pretty. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And so as a reminder, as Junae's kind of finishing up putting those into, so we can chat a little bit about them. So the goal of asking these questions to you all is because we know that many of you are not actually part of the movement building coalition, either because you don't have the time or the bandwidth, or you haven't known about it. So it might be that you actually sign up to participate in that soon. But a lot of the things that we've been hearing so far that people have talked about, I think it is worth acknowledging that right now there isn't a coordinated, well-built infrastructure to support the national movement, and there aren't national campaigns that are happening unless there's a very specific thing like the child tax credit is up for a vote and everybody rallies around that because it's something that we know, like we need to have all hands on deck. But there isn't a consistent kind of nurturing of the movement. And so what we're really wanting to understand from you all is, as that movement building coalition starts to think about what are the first things over the next 6 to 12 months that we start to kick off? Is it going to be a campaign? Is it going to be building a tool that allows people to search by database and understand who's doing what across the country? Like, we're taking this information from you all to help inform that. So this really is the beginning of the first really truly coordinated and strategic movement building at a national level that we will be undergoing collectively together. So I just want to put that out there, because I think, I definitely hear that there's frustrations or like concerns about what has happened to date. I would say that what we've heard consistently in the roundtables, in the surveys, in meetings like this, is that things are disjointed, things are siloed. People are very focused on the thing that's in front of them because because they have limited time or energy or funding or whatever it might be. And it's been very rare that we've been able to actually have a group of people take a step back and look at the strategic side of things and make sure that that is inclusive of activists, of organizers, of folks who work their 9-to-5s in this space because they're researchers or administrators, as well as pilot recipients and people with lived experience who are on the ground doing this. So that is what we're in the very early stages of launching. And so we're super excited that you guys are here to help us make sure that we're thinking about this in the right context, and that we can bring all this back to the 70+ people who are part of the coalition that are going to start rolling up their sleeves to do the work of this. We can have a better sense from you all what's important. So we're looking at this now side by side. I'd love to understand from somebody who hasn't spoken yet, are you seeing something here when you see them side by side, or is there something that you want to share about your own voting that feels important? And again, we just have maybe 3 or 4 minutes on this before we move into the kind of closing things. So we'd love to hear from multiple people. So Catherine, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You're muted. Catherine M., are you there? Maybe we go to Carrie. Oh, there you are. Yep.
Okay. I see, like, within the questions and the options provided, that there's this kind of funneling into guaranteed basic income rather than just basic income. And personally, like, I see that the kind of guaranteed income community of practice is really sold on that versus universal basic income. But I think in the end game, it just kind of basically will fall into being a welfare program and not have the transformative effects that I think a lot of people are very excited about. So I hope that can be a conversation at the conference rather than just kind of steering everything into guaranteed basic income.
We're going to dig a lot into the idea of universal versus targeted, and actually some folks are going to talk about the pitfalls and benefits of different approaches and all of that stuff. So yeah, for sure. I think that's we know that everybody is hungry for that conversation. So there's going to be a few different opportunities to engage in it. Carrie.
Yes, so quickly, I just wanted to say that based on my experience the last couple elections, it would probably be much easier to get people already in office to get on our side and advocate with them and get them speaking about it in their elected roles. But I also want to encourage anyone and everyone who even has an inkling of it to run for your local office. One of my jobs right now is I coach people to run for local office. So if you want some help with that, feel free to reach out to me. But it's not as hard as it may sound. And also, even having people on like city council can help influence things like mayors for a guaranteed income or the counties for a guaranteed income. So please, please, please run for office. I will be running for state house legislature next year, and but also advocate to the ones already in there, because I know that will be a little more effective and easier in the beginning anyway.
Nice. Any other thoughts from folks who haven't spoken yet?
I just had a question. Are we going to get are you going to compile this in a way that you can communicate with us on each one of these questions? What happened? Is this going to be available?
The slide deck that Janae shared will follow up with everybody who's a registrant so that you can see this, and these results will be in there. And then let's put a pin in that for just a second, because that's actually some part of like the next steps and wrap up that we'll make sure that we cover. I just want to make sure, is there anybody else who hasn't spoken that wants to share their thinking or what they're noting as they're looking at this?
Sorry, I just had a quick separate thought. I think we also need to get involved individually in some of the democracy reforms, because right now the kind of big money that kind of owns the politicians is going to block any good faith politicians from helping us. And the ones that I see that are very productive are the ranked choice voting movement and the democracy dollars, democracy vouchers, which has popped up in Seattle and a bunch of places in California. And I can't wait for that to get nationalized, because it allows candidates to be opted in to campaign finance limits, so the courts can't rule that out. And it just puts people focused on their voters again and gives money to kind of grassroots candidates. So I'd advise us to also get into those democracy reforms to kind of allow us to be able to make Congress, et cetera, be functional for us.
Nice. Thanks, Catherine. Okay, well, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about so we've gathered ideas, we've gathered actual, just in your guys' minds, what some of the priorities across these different areas are, which is fantastic and will be incredibly helpful for the next pieces that the Movement Building Coalition are going to be focused on. Janae, do you want to pull up the slide that has where we are and where we're going? So just similar to the survey, similar to the roundtable conversations, that what we gathered here today is going to be an important part of what happens on May 25th and June 29th from the Movement Building Coalition side of things in particular. Like, everything that's here is going to be a big part of how the Movement Building Coalition thinks about not only what the criteria for choosing the priorities are, but then when it comes time to make those decisions about what the initial programs and campaigns at that national level, that kind of movement level, what those would look like. This will all help inform that. So we will have, this is a quarterly state of the movement. We'll have opportunities for all of us to come together again at BIG. So in a month, we'll all come together and be able to learn more from each other, dig into some of these different topics and ideas that everybody's feeling very kind of excited and energized around engaging in with the broader community. And then we will also, it's not on this schedule because it can be overwhelming to have lots and lots, but in August, we'll have our next quarterly State of the Movement meeting, right? And so in August, we're going to be able to come back here to this forum, which again is the forum. When we think of the quarterly State of the Movement, we're trying to support on that spectrum of engagement. If we maybe go back to that real quick, Janae, that slide, that what we're wanting to make sure happens in these sessions are
Sorry, Stacy, which slide?
the spectrum of engagement, that we make sure that during these times together, we're doing consulting, we're involving you guys in the process, we're hearing your concerns, we're understanding like what your feedback is on some of the things that folks are starting to think through, and even starting to do some of that collaboration work here, so that we can make sure that the folks who are ultimately that are part of that Movement Building Coalition are able to make decisions around what those first programs are that we're going to launch in the late summer and early fall, what that looks like, to make sure it actually is addressing the things that you guys are talking about. So, and what you're concerned about, what your hope you're hopeful about. And we'll bring to the next quarterly State of the Movement, you can go back to the timeline. The next quarterly State of the Movement in August, we'll be bringing the next iteration. So in August, we'll most likely, from the Movement Building Coalition, we'll start to have some initial opportunities or possibilities of what the programs and campaigns might look like, and want to get feedback from you guys around what that looks like. If the decision that's been made based on your guys' feedback here is we're going to do a national narrative campaign, what does that look like? What are the things that we need to tackle first? We want to make sure that we're getting your guys' feedback and thoughts before we move into the full design and launch of some of those campaigns and programs. So super excited to have gone through this first quarterly State of the Movement with you all. The first one that's after the movement building cohort and coalition has kind of gotten together and started the process. And also super excited that we're having this conversation a month before the big conference, because I think this will help us make sure Income Movement leads the organizing of that in partnership with US Big. And we want to make sure that we're integrating some of the questions and thoughts that have come up here into the panel questions and discussions that happen in Big as well, so that we can make sure we really do take that opportunity to dig deeper into these different pieces. So really looking forward to that, and looking forward to all of these opportunities to see your lovely faces again, because it is fantastic to see so many of you, and fantastic to see so many of you who are working in so many different capacities. So really appreciate you all sticking with us. Appreciate Commissioner Jayapal for getting us started in this conversation, and for June for being our lovely guide through the process, and for each of you for being here with us. We will follow up with links to the recording, links to the deck that we just went through, the slides, and links to anything that was over in the chat that we shared with you all as we did this conversation. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, and we will see you soon. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.